thanks so much for being here tonight. Thank you to our live audience here in the Jubilee Room and also our online audience. A big welcome to all of those people that are watching online. We'll have plenty of opportunity for questions later on, and we'll be recording this program so that we can pop it onto our education website in a few weeks. But don't worry, we'll only be recording the back of people's heads, nothing else. It is my great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Benjamin Franklin, the President of the Legislative Council, to welcome you here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniela. My mother is the only one who calls me Benjamin when she's angry at me, so I'm already traumatised. Look, good evening, everybody, and can I give you all a very warm welcome to the Parliament of New South Wales for tonight's event, Parliament Unpacked, Reflections on Representation. For those who I haven't met, I'm Ben Franklin. I am one of the two presiding officers in the New South Wales Parliament. I'm the President of the Legislative Council, and the other presiding officer, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly, and I together run the precinct, and we are delighted to support the CEE team in having these amazing events. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land upon which we all meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and extend those respect to elders past and present and to any Aboriginal people who are here with us this evening. I should start as well by acknowledging there are going to be a range of bells this evening. This is a working parliament. This is in fact the final parliamentary evening, final parliamentary sitting this year. And that was just a text telling me whether I needed to come into the chamber to vote or not. I don't, so that's a good thing. But there may be a few of those, so don't be put off. This year we've been imagining what the future of democracy will look like as we've celebrated the Legislative Council's bicentenary. This year has seen the 200-year anniversary of Australia's mother parliament. And over the course of the last year, we've been reflecting on our past, celebrating our achievements and imagining what the future of democracy looks like in this state, a future that you are all intrinsically part of. If you'd like to learn more about the Council, the beginnings of democracy in Australia, I encourage you, after you've finished here this evening, to have a look at the fantastic exhibition in the Fountain Court, which is entitled Legacy and Evolution, 200 Years of the Legislative Council. And it talks about the entire beginnings and the foundation of democracy in this nation. But tonight we gather in Australia's oldest continuously run public building, in the historic Jubilee Room. This room used to be the library for the Parliament of New South Wales and was built in 1906. It was the library until the 1980s and now, of course, serves ceremonial functions like the ones we're here for this evening. Tonight's the final Parliament Unpacked event, and this is such a great series. These are events that have been put together by the Communications and Engagement and Education team to really demystify the inner workings of our legislature and democracy right here in New South Wales. And we are so lucky tonight to have a really terrific panel of current members of Parliament who will explore the topics of representation in our Westminster democracy. They'll share their thoughts on a range of issues, including the qualities that make a really effective elected representative, how members of Parliament actually represent diverse communities and how they juggle a role which consists often of a whole range of different things, being a representative for the community, being a legislator in this place, being a member of a political party, scrutinising government or being a part of a government. Often those roles can come into conflict with each other, but tonight you'll hear how each of these members make that conflict work. So it gives me enormous pleasure to introduce the panel that we have with us this evening. The first is Tamara Smith, who is in fact my local Member of Parliament as well, up in Ballina. She's the member for Ballina in the Legislative Assembly and has been since 2015. Tamara is the chair of the Joint Standing Committee on the Office of the Valuer-General, as well as being the New South Wales Greens spokesperson for education, early learning, skills and TAFE, Premier and Cabinet, older people, tourism and disaster relief. She has a big job. But Tamara is also an adjunct professor in the School of Law and Justice at Southern Cross University. We are very lucky to have her as our local member, and it's wonderful to have you here this evening, Tamara. Our second panellist is Steph de Pasqua. Now, Steph is a member of the Liberal Party. She's only very recently at the last election been elected as the member for Drummoyne, and already she has carved a real mark on this place, being appointed as one of the temporary speakers in the Legislative Assembly. These are the people who have to, obviously, to maintain order over that 93-member chamber. And the fact that Steph was appointed to that position so early in her career shows the respect in which she is held in the Parliament. Prior to her election, she was the Deputy Mayor of Canada Bay Council, having been elected a councillor in 2017, when it looks like she was about 18 years old. But you know, she is one of the youngest members of Parliament and an absolute dynamo. It's wonderful to have her here with us this evening too. Thirdly, on my right, Dr. David Saliba is a member of the New South Wales Legislative Assembly as well. He represents the electorate of Fairfield, also was elected in 2023 and is a member of the Australian Labor Party. David sits on several parliamentary committees, including the Joint Select Committee on the Greater Sydney Parklands Trust, the Committee on the Healthcare Complaints Commission, the Committee on the Independent Commission Against Corruption, and the Public Accounts Committee. These committees, and I'm sure that the panellists will talk about tonight, go to some of the heart of how democracy actually functions in this state, and that is where often real legislative change starts. Before entering Parliament, Dr. Saliba served as a federal agent in the Australian Federal Police and as an infantry officer in the Australian Army Reserve. Dr. Saliba holds degrees in law and economics with double first-class honours as well as a PhD. I think you'll agree that we have a pretty impressive panel here this evening. Hopefully as well, one of my colleagues in the upper house, who clearly hasn't been given permission to leave at this point, will be with us as well, and that's the Honourable Peter Primrose, who is the Assistant President in the upper house. He was, in fact, he's been a member of the upper house since 1996. Prior to that, he was a member of the Legislative Assembly from 1988 to 1991 in the seat of Camden. He was formerly a president of the upper house, and he's in fact the longest serving member of the Legislative Council, affectionately called the father of the house. When I leave here, which I will have to do after this introduction, I will go and try and find him and tell him to come in forthwith.
He knows, and he's apologies that he will be late.
Excellent.
But he's really hoping to get here very soon.
Because when Daniela tells you to do something in this place, you just do it. We've all had that. But look, I'm sure you'll enjoy the insights tonight provided by this seriously esteemed panel. Thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight on the last sitting night of the year. The Speaker and I have always wanted to bring more people into the Parliament to make people understand this is their house, as it always will be. You are welcome tonight and you are welcome back anytime. I'll now hand over to Daniela. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that very, very warm welcome. And thank you to each of our panel members tonight. And yes, we will hopefully be joined by the Honourable Peter Primrose very soon as well. So I thought we've got a series of questions that we'll ask the panel members, and I thought we could just bounce it between you, the answers, and maybe we'll start here and then come back for the second question and go back and forth, very casual in conversation style. And also then we'll hand over to our audience here to ask questions as well towards the end, and also our online audience. You'll get to be able to ask questions via the Slido platform, and we sent the link in the reminder email for everybody, so you might want to get that ready and have some questions, think of some questions as we go. So my first question is to each of you, and I'm just wondering what kind of personal and professional qualities do you need to be a Member of Parliament, to be elected and to do the job? David, would you like to go first?
Well, thanks, and thanks very much for having me here. Hey, everyone. Hey, Matthew, nice to see you again. Thank you for all your work in the area. Yes, front right. It's an interesting question. So I wanted to be a politician probably since the age of very young. And the way that I see what a politician does when I was in my teens and 20s, very significantly in terms of what I see and what I do right now. And I guess I see three things that are pretty much important. So I guess the first thing is being a good listener, because most people that I engage with, particularly constituents, come and see you when they're going through some very turbulent times in their life. And it requires you to listen to them and to try to get the facts and to solve their problems as best as possible. So listening is one of those big things. The other one is obviously being that advocate, being that strong voice. And I represent Fairfield. Fairfield's the most disadvantaged, socioeconomically disadvantaged community in the state, according to the data. So it's just very important that I seek to uplift Fairfield, and I have to do that through the strong advocacy within the media, within the local community, within the parliament, externally in terms of the loud, noisy politics, but also quietly with our one-on-one meetings and our small meetings. And the last point would be an investigator, being a good investigator, because in order to drive outcomes, in order to drive change, you need to investigate the data to convey your arguments so that you're able to advocate as strongly as possible. I'll give you one example of that. Train station lifts. So I'm right now petitioning the state government, despite being a Labor MP, to set up lifts and accessibility at Villawood, Carramar and Eunora train stations. And in order to make that argument, I've collected data to show that most of the North Shore line have lifts. Yet in Fairfield, only 1 out of 5 train stations have lifts. So 20% compared to almost 100% accessibility. And so I'm trying to articulate that disparity to convince government and convince the parliament, convince the government to invest in our community. And that's just one of the things that we do. So I guess, I could talk more about it later, but
terrific. Yeah, thank you. Tamara.
Thank you, Daniela, and thanks so much to the whole team for this series this year. It's an excellent series. And hello to the guests here and everyone online. So I'm the member for Ballina. Look, I'm a very reluctant politician, and so I think that the two, I suppose, optimistic sense, I really believe that humility and a sense of service, and I note that we've got our most senior, the CEO, Mark Webb, here. He's of the whole Department of Parliamentary Services. Hello, Mark. And of course, we have a number of staff here as well. I think that service and humility, it really is, whether, I'm not suggesting that that all members of parliament, probably in the federal parliament, we might see people, there's a lot of theatre, there's a lot of the cut and thrust, it's very robust. But beneath that, certainly in the legislative assemblies, it is a sense of service to your community. And so if you think that it's glamorous and, whilst it is an enormous privilege, and it is a huge responsibility, I think that it is service, and I'm sure my colleagues agree, that you get up every day, and it's about bettering society, serving your community, and I guess bettering the world. And then humility, because I really think one of the things I learnt, because when you're campaigning in an election period, certainly my experience as a candidate the first time, is that you everyone kind of hangs on every word and what you have to say, and you think, oh, this is great, what I say, everyone wants to hear what I say. But of course, you quickly learn that no, they don't. They want you to shut up, and they want you to listen to the community, because I'm their person. So our communities, we're their person, we're their advocate, regardless of the political party. We represent everyone, all of our constituencies. So, on average, it's about 50,000 people. And so the humility is understanding that the community are the hero of every story. And I genuinely believe that understanding, if you have that understanding, then that you'll be a very effective local member.
Terrific. Thank you. Stephanie.
Thank you, and hi everybody, and hello to everybody online. I would agree wholeheartedly with what my colleagues have said. The only thing I'd probably add to what you were saying, Tamara, is it's about humility, and it's about being empathetic, being able to understand someone's perspective, someone that may not have the same, see the world the same way that you do, but having the ability to walk in someone's shoes, I think, is really important. I would say you absolutely need to be persuasive. So David, I'd agree with that, and not take no for an answer. But I actually think that what people want to see in politicians is what I've been listening to while I've been out in my community, and that's the ability to drive change. And to see vision, because we're all here to make a difference. We're all here to make our communities better. And so to having that vision, I think, is really important part of being a representative in this place. And having vision means that you can get over the nitty-gritty of day-to-day politics and actually work with the government. I'm a member of the opposition, and in the past 2 years that I've been here, I've really made it a priority to work constructively and collaboratively for my community. Yes, we may have our differences in the chamber, and we may have robust debate, and that's the brilliant thing about our democracy and the system that we live in. However, we need to rise above that, and we need to actually work together, because I think that's what our community expects of us.
And we see that though. So I see that with Tamara and Stephanie. So we're in different parties, yet, like, to be fair,
Friends.
we're good friends. Like, and you see that humility in a sense that we ask each other, like, what's your approach on this? What's your views on that? And learn from each other in that regard. So I wholeheartedly second all that, all those points.
That's terrific. And that dovetails into my next question about in your day-to-day job. So what does representation look like in the lower house? Because I have lower house members here. But so what do you do to represent? How do you do that? Can you give us some examples of some of the issues that you've been dealing with and how you actually go about, as one person representing your community, getting those things done?
I think... Oh,
We'll do this.
We'll mix it up a bit. So my community had, in the Northern Rivers, had the very devastating floods in 2022. And my last term was was the Black Summer bushfires, COVID, and then the 2022 floods. So my community, in terms of resilience, we've really been tested, and so have our local leaders. And to me, representation, what it looks like is it's a lot of behind the scenes work. It's countless hours of, as David's saying, of advocacy, understanding, getting knowledge. So skills. So I think, we've obviously, most people who've made it this far have skills in terms of maybe not real world skills, but we can certainly talk and we can certainly present well. But in terms of knowledge, I think that is, for me, I'm been in the game for 9 years. It's not a game, but I've been in office for 9 years, and understanding complex problems, understanding who you can reach, building networks, for me is very important. I encourage my team, and I'm sure my colleagues do. It's all about making sure that you have good relationships across the board, because let's face it, it's public servants who are the ones that are doing a lot of the work of government, and building those relationships. So it means that you can understand the needs, and then you know how to advocate. And then there's lots of ways of doing that. But for me, representing is about listening. It's listening, but it is really painstakingly, step-by-step, understanding an issue and getting that knowledge, and then deciding with the constituent or with the organisation how you're going to, what's the strategy. So it's a lot of sitting around. I was a solicitor before. It's not so much advice in terms of top-down advice. It's saying to people, look, these are multiple things that we could do. And in case of flood recovery, you're dealing with traumatised people. And so, as Steph's saying, the empathy, but also, you want to take action. You really want, none of us want to be pen pushers. None of us want to just flick a representation to a minister if we know that's probably not going to be effective. I'm all about, and I think we all are in the lower house, we're very much about outcomes for people. And then also, I guess, because I have a philosophy of it's never exhausted. So you go through all the things that you can do, and then if someone still wants to keep going, you start again and you do it all again. And so it's a sense of it's not a case closed unless the constituent themselves decide that's enough for them. So a voice, that is where I feel that what we do is we support and echo the voices of our constituency and our community, and serve them in that way. And rather than I'm deciding what I represent. So I'll never say the words, I'm speaking for someone. It's always that I'm advocating on behalf or championing.
Yes, so I'll spice up from a discussion perspective. So Steph, constituent reps. Can you give an example about some of the constituent reps you do?
Yes, I can give a recent example. Just following on from the discussion and what we do day to day, I think the biggest, I guess if we have to sum it up in a word, I would say presence. Presence is the word. Being present in your community, being open and accessible. We've all heard that, you just see your member at election time. I have a real big problem with that. I think you need to see your member all the time. And I actually take it as a compliment when I stand at a train station or, at a local, in a local street and people say, "Oh, I've seen enough of you. Thank you. I want that." Because I really want to have my ear to the ground, and I think that's something that all three of us really, really value. I share the same views as Tamara. I don't think it's right to just make a representation for representation's sake. I'm a problem solver. I've come from local government where you have to sometimes be creative in the way that you solve problems. And so when I took those skills with me to this place, and when I first got elected, something I did was establish those relationships. I wrote to every minister and said, "I wish you all the very best, and can I meet with you to discuss issues in my electorate?" And I was really surprised because everyone that I wrote to said yes. And, you don't necessarily expect that as a member of the opposition. But you can achieve results. You can achieve results from the other side, and I have. Something that my community told me, both when I was a councillor, but also during the campaign and afterwards, was that they really care about ferries. I represent Drummoyne. We've got 35 kilometres of foreshore. We love the Parramatta River, but also the Parramatta River is a really important way for us to travel to and from places like the CBD and Parramatta. And my community were telling me that you get a beautiful sunny day and you can't get on the ferry and you watch 3 or 4 go past. So instead of just writing a letter or standing, jumping up and down, I went and did something about it. I met with the minister, and to her credit, we've been able to establish a really good, robust working relationship. We sat down. She said, "What are the problems?" Well, the problem is that it starts too early down the river. It needs to start further down the river to give people a chance to get on. And that's something that we were able to achieve. We got, I think, 26 services on weekends, 14 on the weekday that start at Sydney Olympic Park rather than Parramatta. So I hope, it's not always roses in this place, but there are some really good days because you can deliver for your community even from the opposition.
All right. I'll probably sum it up in five features of what a member of parliament does. I guess the first thing is that we're in this place here right now to pass laws, to regulate behaviour of businesses, of individuals, of organisations, etc. The second thing that we do is that we lobby the executive level of government, the bureaucracies and the ministers to allocate public goods and services, so police, healthcare, hospitals, teachers at schools, our transport system, things that relate to all 93 electorates in New South Wales. The third thing that we do and what we've been speaking about is these constituent representation. So people come and see us. Our local residents will come and see us from matters such as requiring social housing, issues of police, issues with their schools, issues with public transport. And our job is to listen to them, to figure out a solution. And if we have to advocate, we would write something called a representation to the minister or to the relevant government agency. So Steph would write it to the government. I'd write it to the Labor government, so to speak, basically conveying what is it that this person is going through and what is it that they are seeking, and would get a response back about, hey, we're going to fix this, or this is our response. An example of that would be someone needs eye surgery, cataract surgery in order to drive. They've been told it's a 12-month waiting list. They need it for employment. Right to the health minister engages with health. Health response back saying we could do it in 3 months. The fourth thing that we do is attend events, and we attend events to legitimise organisations and the work they do. A lot of non-for-profits, a lot of community groups, a lot of businesses, to be there, to be that conduit. And the final thing is, and it's the hardest thing, is leading the community. And I guess, and this is probably a point we'll probably talk about later on. I think we'll talk about it now. It's a very important question. The biggest issue that I find as a new member of parliament, as a leader within my community, is how do I go about collectively empowering my local community to be better, to support each other, to uplift. And I guess what do you think about that? Like, how have you thought about that? Have there been any challenges, any successes in that regard?
Because it is better if it is one person representing, but you've got a whole lot of people in the communities, and that's how things happen, isn't it?
Come back to the sense of the community being the hero of every story. So to me, it's more, I'm the ally of what you're saying, David, of all of those leaders in the community. So it's obviously I'm in the Greens Party. So in terms of, I've got like multiple environmental groups in my area that do incredible work, but, particularly in the space of koalas and other endangered species. And so I'm not empowering them as much as they're empowering me, because they're giving me the tools and the knowledge of what to bring here. And so as a regional, I'm the only regional MP here for us, because we're travelling so far. I'm always have a sense that I'm not, like, it's weird. It's like I have, my consciousness is very much in the north. And I know that other regional MPs have that same sense. So it's really just vocalising and advocating for them. But I totally get what you're saying, David, about that, we are also modelling, and I guess that comes back to the bipartisanship that I have experienced in regional areas with regional MPs through COVID, for example, and I'm sure that that you observed that from where your various vantage points before you're elected. Communities love to see people across the aisle working together to deliver and not fighting and not talking about themselves. There's nothing more tedious than politicians talking about themselves. And question time, unfortunately, can be a lot of that. So for me, it's about I'm being empowered by my community around what to champion here.
Terrific. I would just like to welcome the Honourable Peter Primrose. Thank you so much for joining us. We know that those bells have been ringing and ringing and ringing in the Legislative Council. We're just talking about what you actually do as a Member of Parliament to represent people. But before we do that, do you mind if I ask you what has been happening in the Legislative Council? Because we have heard the bells, and Mr. President had to rush out as well.
Well, lots happened in the upper house. We're in the process of doing legislation today. We have 3 days of a sitting. The Tuesdays and the Thursdays are government business days, and then the Wednesday is when we do private members' business. So it can be members of the government, it can be crossbenchers or opposition members can put up bills, can put up legislation. So today's government business day, and for instance, the bill we're doing and we just finished is a bill that goes through, it's been through the lower house, comes to us, and it's to do with essentially environmental offsets in terms of development. So it's quite complicated, very tricky, and lots of people have views. We go through, members are all entitled to speak, all sides if they wish. The government, usually a minister, the leader from the opposition who chooses the shadow minister or representative in the upper house, and then whoever leads for the crossbench get 45 minutes. Then all the other members, get between 20 and 30 minutes, depending on what type of bill it is. Then we have a division about whether people support it. If people have amendments to the legislation, to the bill, then we go into committee, and that's what you've just heard, is that it's very open, very public process. Someone will say, I think this should be in the bill, which becomes the law. So it's important that it's exactly right. Then someone else will say, no, I disagree with that, and then goes backwards and forwards. And when people are finished, it's put by the chair. And if two or more people say, no, we don't agree with that, we think you've counted it wrong, then the bells ring. Normally they ring for 4 minutes, but by leave, if there's a lot of them, you can do it for a minute. So just to save time, and that's what's happening because members are in there anyway. So people are very cooperative. But if I can just say that the good thing is some other countries, like some US states, I mean the US is a democracy like we are, they have a system whereby people can put keys in their office, turn the key and then press a button to say whether they vote or not. Our system is there's no hiding. You come down, it's all televised, both houses, you can see, and you're totally responsible because everyone who wishes, the millions of people who watch the debates in the Legislative Council and the Legislative Assembly, forevermore, not only is it in the Hansard, but people can watch directly how you vote. So you sit on one side or you sit on the other side, you're for or against that. And so that to me is a very good public system. You're openly accountable by rules that the whole Parliament's agreed to as to how you make laws. And so that's why we follow a very rigorous approach. I'm the assistant president in the Parliament, and my job, for example, when I'm chairing it, is to make it very clear that and everyone accepts that you're non-partisan. Everyone abides by the rules as decided, the standing orders of the Parliament. So, thank you.
That's terrific. So assistant president, and we have the deputy speaker. Temporary, speaker. So would you say that's the same in the Legislative Assembly, that it is a bipartisan role as the presiding officer?
Absolutely. I think, and I'm sure you will agree, Peter, when you assume the role as in my house, in our case, as the speaker or as the president, you do so knowing that once you're there, you are totally fair. And I think the best piece of advice that somebody gave me when I first became a temporary speaker and served on the speakers panel is that if both sides of the house are upset with you, it means you're doing the job right.
I must be winning.
And I think all of us do take that responsibility very, very seriously. Because we also have a responsibility to make sure that every member has an opportunity to contribute and is heard with respect. I think that's really, really important, and that's something that I've really taken into my role, fairness and the ability to contribute to debate with respect.
Terrific. I think I'm going to ask one more question and then throw it open to the audience, but I'm going to be very tricky and put two of my questions together into one, because looking at them now, I think they're quite similar. So
We'll just deflect, Jamie.
So how do you represent an electorate of citizens that may have many different backgrounds and ideas? And at the same time, how do you represent them when perhaps if your views clash with those ideas that they want you to represent? And or even the views of your party might be different to your own personal views at times. So how do you deal with those tricky situations as a representative?
Okay, well, I guess I'll start by saying that the public interest is multifaceted. So different people have different perspectives, people see the world differently. And that's effectively based from our experiences, our life experiences. So I grew up in Cabramatta in the 90s, and drug and gang crime was rampant. So I got a big look, a different perspective of drugs and law enforcement compared to others, say perhaps. The key thing here is that as a member of Parliament, as a representative of Fairfield, I need to weigh up all the different perspectives and views to ensure that I best represent them with respect to my party in terms of our internal deliberations, in terms of my statements here, in terms of my actions on the ground. But the problem is that it's about, like, you're never going to fully know what your electorate think, because it's about data collection, and there'll be people that will be vocal on an issue, say, for example, on social media, or say, for example, sending you an email, but that may not necessarily be reflective of the entire community. So there's an inherent bias when you're engaged by certain people and you think, oh, this is a really big issue, when in fact it's not. So I'll throw it over to them, but say that we do our best. We do our best to listen, as Steph and Tamara have said before. We do our best to advocate. But the key thing is that we don't get it right all the time. We don't. And whenever people are upset with respect to some of the things or some of the legislative decisions that we've done, I'll get an email, I'll get something, and I make sure I go and call them individually and hear them out. And it's one of those things where we may not necessarily agree, but at least I've taken the time, and I know that they do the same thing too. Yeah, most people do, to be blunt. Taking the time to listen to that constituent. They're surprised, like, oh, this person's giving me a call. And I'll spend 20, 25 minutes speaking with this person, and it's listening.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe it's because I've worked in crime a bit. It doesn't really matter to me in the sense of, it doesn't matter to me how someone votes at all. And it doesn't matter to me in the sense of whether I personally share the same worldview as the constituent. And I have a perfect example was that I had, in the same sort of period of time, I had a family of a police officer who was facing some serious charges himself, and I had the family of the alleged victim of that, and it was very emblematic of the juggling that we do, which is that it's almost like every person, I'm always looking for those, I guess, those core principles of that someone hasn't had due process, that they haven't had a voice, that there's been some the unfairness in terms of the processes that they've been guided through. And so the common ground is that. The common ground is the humanity. It's the sense of someone feeling disempowered, because really, as David's alluding to, people come to us, as he said early on, people come to us. My experience in a regional constituency is they're either very entitled, and so they're coming with a real sense of entitlement, which I find quite challenging, or it's the absolute end of the road. So they've tried everything. So this will sound weird, but people who are super empowered themselves generally don't go to their local member. It's not the sort of thing they wake up and they go, you know what, I've got an issue with my neighbour, I'm going to go to my local member. So it's really that people who are feeling very marginalised. And so to me, it doesn't really matter in terms of whether I believe or not, whether I share the same opinion about the world, but it's that common humanity of injustice, a sense of injustice, a sense of something. And so you're not guaranteeing that you can deliver a sense of justice, but you are certainly, I feel that what we do is empower constituents to take action and wear their advocate and to say, well, I will walk with you on this path. And so for me, yeah, I don't really have, no one actually says, do you think I'm right? And if they did, I would probably say, well, I think it's about what's right for you, which isn't just being weasel words. It's more that it's like, as a servant, which I think we are, it's, for me, it's not a paramount importance.
Definitely.
Oh, I would agree with that completely. I think often when constituents, when people come to our electorate offices or they see us on the street, often they come to us as a last resort. They've been everywhere else. They've exhausted all other avenues, and then they're coming to see their local member. So in my office, we've taken the view that we help everyone, and it doesn't matter what level of government it is, we try and help everyone with the issue, because I think it's really important if someone has come to you to ask for help that you don't close the door on them, that you actually take the time to listen. And yes, absolutely, it's normal for us to not see the world the same way that someone else may. But I don't think that matters, like Tamara says. I think what matters is that we sit down, we have those open and honest conversations. And for me, I think being honest about what we can and can't achieve, being honest about what we can and can't change, but also being part of the political process and being part of policy development. I actually think it is better for us to engage from all sides of the, and to accept and speak to people on all sides of the debate, because we actually produce better outcomes. Perhaps there's something we've missed, perhaps there's something we haven't thought of. So I actually welcome the opportunity to speak to people with a range of views. I think that's really important, and I think, at a time when people have less faith in their politicians and less faith in the parliamentary process, we rebuild that trust by engaging with everyone. And so, like my colleagues here, I think it's only a good thing to do that.
Terrific. So Peter, being an upper house member, representation is a little bit different, isn't it? Because you don't have a local geographical constituency. In fact, you represent the whole of the state of New South Wales. So can you give us perhaps some examples of the kinds of representation that you've taken on?
Well, I have, as well as New South Wales as a whole, so you get representations. Both major parties, well, include the National Party and the Liberal Party and us, have
And the Greens.
upper house. Well, but in terms of representing duty electorates, we have, in my case, I have been allocated by the Labor Party 5 duty electorates, which are held by the current opposition. So they're 4 in where I live in northwestern Sydney and northern Tablelands, where in my case I have 1 staff member and she lives in Armidale. So we sort of divide the world up, so we get lots of representation. I mean, my view always was that it's quite silly for someone who lives in Armidale to come down and work Monday to Friday in an office in Sydney. So we learnt from COVID that that's quite okay to actually work. And so she can do a lot of the work for me in terms of keeping me informed and talking to people up there. So we use Zooms and whatever a lot in terms of those representation. So I'm particularly concerned about those areas. A lot of the concerns relate to things about roads. So I announced a major roadworks up there today, which we've been lobbying on behalf of one of the councils. And I've been doing a lot of work, with people in Moree. So there's a whole range of those types of things you can do in terms of individual representations. In another area, for example, we have 2 busy state roads which have developed and becoming busier with development over time. And there's a small road in the middle, and the only way the residents can get out is by there's no traffic lights, going out onto one of those state roads. So you have a council road, which is council's responsibility, and the state roads which are there. I've met with a couple of the residents on site, and I've made representations yesterday to the Office of the Minister for Roads saying, these are state roads, what are your plans? What are you going to do about it? In an adjoining area, the issue of shuttle buses for people to get to the metros. And we're trying to push for shuttle buses, and so I'm taking that up as a campaign. So that's local stuff. But in here, in terms of policies, I'm also Deputy Chair of the Labor Party's Platform Committee. So we have a platform which binds us. It's not something that's plucked out of the air. It is something that all the branches of the Labor Party right across New South Wales put motions in. They go to elected platform committees. policy committees who have open debates, and then that goes to our annual conference, which is an open conference of 1,000 people held at Sydney Town Hall every year, and every member of the Labor Party can vote, and all the media comes, and they vote on the platform. And that democratic process is what guides our direction in here as to how we vote on those broader issues and what we try and achieve. So that's updated every year as part of that very complicated process, and it's a publicly available document as part of our platform. The only other thing I'd say, and I agree with all my colleagues here, is that one of the things that I think I also owe people is my judgment. So if someone comes to me, I'll say, look, I will take this issue up, but from my experience, this is what I think is likely to happen. So have you thought about this? And if you thought about this, if you wish me to make reps in relation to how you've asked, I'm very happy to, and I do that regularly. But maybe it's also worthwhile taking this issue up if it's a federal matter, or here's the local councillors, because this is really a council matter, and they're going to come back and say that to me. So in the sense of being honest with people, in terms of giving them not only the fact that I will do what you want, but here's my judgment on the basis of experience about what is likely to happen, and if they wish to proceed in a particular way, then of course I'll tell them I'm very happy to do that. And then if it doesn't work, come back and see me and we'll give it another try. And I know all my colleagues would do exactly the same.
Thank you. See, they are great insights and terrific examples, so thank you. And I think I hear some questions that people would like to ask. I think I already almost hear them. I've got my colleague Cameron with a roving mic. So if you have a question, and we've got somebody at the front.
Let's see who we've
two
got.
people at the front. Would you please introduce yourself? Just tell us your name. And if you know it, what electorate do you come from? Just let's make it geographic. But if you don't worry.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm from the electorate of Summer Hill, which is next to yours. So
Very
hello,
close.
hello,
Hello.
neighbour.
Neighbour.
I wanted to ask a question about the role of parties within representation. It touches on. I'm sorry, I'm lost on your name.
Peter.
It touches on what you said. My understanding is that today in Australia, party membership is quite low. It's a lot lower than it was a few decades ago, and I wonder, is that detrimental to to representation in Parliament? Would it be beneficial if more people were members of political parties, perhaps a wider range of people? That's what I'm wondering.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to?
I'll be very quick. I think because of the time, we'll be very quick. So I guess the key thing for me is it's incumbent upon politicians to inspire and empower the community, as I said before. So people will join parties if they believe in the politicians within those parties and their ideas and their vision with respect to their community. So I'm very cognizant of that, and it's a big thing for me to engage with young people to ensure that there's that sustainability in political leadership in the future.
I was just going to add to that and say, I think that's why it's so important for, as politicians, people to know what our values are, what we stand for. And, if we want to encourage people to join political parties, they need to understand what we stand for, what it is we're fighting for. So I think it's really beneficial, both as legislators, as politicians, to have that participation at a grassroots level, and equally it's important for us to inspire people to want to join political parties because they have the same values as us.
And to be honest, we wouldn't be here in our respective parties without the volunteers in our party and without the members doing all that unsexy work, which is
I agree.
Thank you, Peter. We might see you back.
Yeah, your local groups, they're the ones that are out door knocking.
Duck the question.
And, facilitating local group meetings in my party, our state delegates conferences, which is where we decide all the policies. And so, I think that it is, we've seen the rise of independence. I love being in a political party because all of our policies are there, the pillars of our party are there, and so it sort of cuts out any confusion, and I'm sure that my colleagues agree. It's like it's for everyone to see. So when someone's coming to see me, I'm not pushing that down their throat, but they certainly know that if they're coming to me and advocating to cut down a rainforest, that would be odd. And I have had things like that happen. And so, you know, that's the only times where I say, you do realise I'm in the Greens Party. So, which doesn't mean if I find that there's been a lack of due process that I might not assist them. But I think, I like that. So I think it is part of healthy democracy. But, you know, who knows in the future? I think minority government is very healthy. And I think we're seeing that around the world. And, you know, on the crossbench, which I'm on, we have 13 members of the crossbench, and Labor is in minority government. And what I'm seeing compared to my first 2 terms, where the coalition were in government, is just so much more consensus decision making, really, because they simply don't have the numbers. And I think that's very healthy.
Terrific.
I think we had another question
We had
up
another
the front.
question
Was
in
that
the room,
right?
and then we might go to
Excellent.
see if there are any
Who was
other
our next
questions.
question? Oh,
Thanks very much for that. That partly stole part of the question, because in my early days, I joined a couple of the political parties to help them out in the election. And the thing that changed it is eventually I got successful, started to realise I'm paying 53% tax, and my politics changed, and I then joined, but ended up being the opposition. But what they're pointing out, which I realised, is the small pool of people that are in the membership. We'd go along to some of the people, then there'd be 30 people in the room. And out of there, they've got to select the local alderman, the local mayor, the local state member, and the federal member, and a future prime minister, out of a small pool of 30, you know. Not a criticism, I don't think most groups have the problem, but it's very, very small pool, and it's having work experience outside of the net. I think it's difficult. So I don't know how you're going to get around it, but it's certainly difficult when you've got such a small pool of people to call on. Yeah.
Thank you. Any comments on that, or any comments about how to boost that?
I think that diversity, and you know, the I guess the elephant in the room is diversity, and in particular women. It's great that we're seeing so many more women in our parliaments, and then, you know, in including obviously members of their parties, and then coming through, and then diversity, and you know. And that's something I think there's still a lot more work to do, and how each of our respective parties are open spaces, and not cul-de-sacs of you know, kind of colonial, you know, just a whole lot of white guys. When I first, anyway, I won't criticise. Like, I was a member of the Labor Party for about a month, because my grandfather was a member of the Labor Party, and I just didn't see myself reflected back in the regional, local group branch, and so I think that's. But even in my own party, there will tend to be. It's very. There's a lot of very wealthy people in the party, so it's we struggle with that. I think we all struggle with how do we truly become representative of our communities.
I guess if you look at the photos of the earlier parliaments versus today, you're seeing a lot more diversity. And the key thing here is that it's important, and I know Mark's a very strong proponent of this as well, it's important that our parliament represents our society. So in terms of the political parties, the key thing here is that this is a democracy where anyone can put their hands up to run for parliament, run for council, to run for federal parliament. And it's a matter of, and with the advent of technology and social media, you're finding that individuals are getting a larger voice now relative to before. And so I'd imagine as time progresses, that diversity will increase. And so it's not, and Tamara mentioned it here with respect to this being a minority government, and that there are a lot of crossbenchers there. That's the norm, and you're gonna see that, and so that is the diversity that you're talking about, I believe.
I just quickly would add that it's incumbent upon us as leaders in our community to take people along with us and to inspire them, you know, if they have the same views as us, or, you know, if people are partial to, I'm a member of the Liberal Party, for example, if they're partial to Liberal values, I think it's incumbent on us to inspire them to join. And I think you inspire people to join political parties when you stand up for your values, when people know what you believe in. And yeah, that's what I'd like to add.
Thank you. That's a really important point, I think. And I think it's difficult. It's a lot of work being a member of a political party, isn't it? It's a lot of volunteering. It's a lot of time. And, you know, we have very, very busy lives. And so it's something that perhaps, yes, inspiring people is a great idea, and showing them what it is that happens and how you can participate.
But you can also do, you know, it's sort of that service volunteerism. You know, you can do something quite small, like you could just do, you know, a market, you know, go along to a market stall. So I think that's what's great as well, is that people don't have to sign up to do all the things, and then other people want to do all the things. But young people, sitting between two very young people, well, you're not, yeah, David's not that young actually, but it is so great. This Parliament, we have got a lot of young MPs, which is fabulous.
To the political aspirants out there, so it took me 20 years since I joined the Labor Party to finally to run for an election, to stand for the Labor Party for the election. So I guess my advice to young aspirants out there is that politics is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's applicable in terms of chasing your dreams to be here, but in addition, trying to transform your communities. Those long-term structural reforms are iterative changes over time that lead to big changes over a generation. I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and I would just say that everyone is on their own timeline, and a lot about politics is about timing. I didn't necessarily set out to be a politician. I got angry about a local park that I wanted upgraded in my community, so I ran on council, and the rest is basically history. And now I'm here as the youngest ever Liberal woman to sit in the lower house, and the youngest member of the New South Wales Parliament at the moment.
That's wonderful.
How awesome's the park now?
It is. It's great.
And that's inspiring. Okay, so we have a question online, do we?
There is one online question.
This is Joseph, one of my colleagues, who is reading the Slido for an online question.
Okay, so here it goes. When it comes to getting results for your constituents, is there an advantage to being in government?
Is everyone looking at me? Yeah, I guess the key thing here is, I'll be blunt about this, the key thing here is relationships. And it's one of the key features of being a good politician, relationship with your constituents, but relationship with your colleagues. I'll tell you now, I'm a backbencher, I'm new here, so I'm new to this. If I was a minister and Steph and Tamara genuinely came and had a strong advocacy point and backed it with evidence, like, I believe in doing the right thing, and I believe everyone here does, in this room definitely, in general, but you'd seek to help them. Like, you're not here to screw people over, you're here to help people. No, seriously, like politics is emotionally tough because you can't solve everyone's problems. There are wicked problems out there. And so is it easier? Or I dare say that I still write, you write to ministers and you get responses back. So there is politics. I'm not that political. We'll see in 10 years' time, but I'm not that political. And it's that public interest. So, yeah.
The Greens are unlikely to ever be form government on their own. And so I think that gives us a real, like, we work very much around advocacy and the long game. So, you know, for example, we've been campaigning on renters' rights for a decade. And, you know, in many ways we're sort of, if you want to use the binary of left and right, but you've got people who are right out there on issues, and then what tends to happen is a compromise. So we've had the recent drug summit. Are we going to suddenly decriminalise drugs? You know, my party would like that. It's unlikely, but we're going to get. So it's all about that, you know, so in some way, yeah, and I think it's just healthy. It's really healthy because in minority government, for example, so to answer the person online, you know, in minority government, you know, the party that's formed government with members of the crossbench in this current parliament, they do have to compromise. They do have to work with multiple perspectives, and I think that's really healthy. Coming back to what you said, if everyone's a little bit unhappy, then you're probably somewhere that's it's healthy. It's healthy.
So there's also question time. So Tamara, Steph, myself, we have the ability to ask questions of the government in front of everyone with respect to issues that are important to them. Did you ask a question today or this week? No.
I did, but I say this respectfully, but in government, they tend to ask what we call the Dixes, which is, tell us how great you are. In opposition, they get handed their questions as well, which is, has the strategy of the day. I'm very lucky in a small party because I get away with just asking about my community, and I know that others are very jealous of that. I'm not criticising it. I'm just pointing out that between all of that, and maybe there's a lot more work, as the President was saying, it's a work in progress around democracy. We used to, in my first term, question time was very different. I actually went with the former Speaker of the House to Westminster and our clerk, Helen Minikin, and other delegates. There was a small group of us. We went to some deliberative democracy conference with the EU, and it was really interesting. And I've been to lots of parliaments and seen lots of different ways of doing question time. And I think that we will keep refining that so that it's not just, in my view, with respect, I find question time utterly tedious most of the time because of that. I'm going to ask about how amazing we are, and then the other polarity is that we're going to trash whatever you're doing. And so I just wonder for the young people in the room, it's like, and online, what your version will be in the future. I think it'll be a lot less of like that.
Interesting to hear that it's already changed in the last 9 years.
I guess I would say, as a member of the opposition, a really important function of opposition is to scrutinise the decisions that are being made. That doesn't necessarily mean that it always has to be negative. It's about asking genuine questions, because as an opposition, you are the, I guess, the alternative choice, the alternative government, if you have it. And so you need to be scrutinising the decisions that are made. Can you achieve from opposition? Yes, and I hope that I show my community every day that you can. And you do that by being really sensible. You do that, as David said, by creating relationships, but also by advocating for your community and not taking no for an answer. That's why we were able to convince the government to continue with the upgrade of Concord High School, which I know it's the only public high school in my electorate. It's never had a major renovation, and so this is going to change the facilities and the standards of education for my community, and that was really important. But the way that you achieve that is by engaging with the other side. And I think if you're going to take, to those online, if you're going to take something from this conversation, it would be that it is important, no matter whether you're in government, whether you sit on the crossbench, whether you're in opposition, you need to collaborate. You need to be having those conversations, because as a representative of your community, that's what your community expects of you as a representative. It's not just about the political point scoring that we see in question time. It's about the people that have elected you to be their representative and what they expect of you as a representative.
And that brings about an important question of accountability, holding governments to account. And who do you think is who is the main holder of that accountability? Who can hold governments to account the most?
Communities.
The people.
You, every 4 years.
And there's a bell. Look, I'm just looking at the time there, and I'm just thinking that this is one event for you, and the night is still young in terms of members of parliament, because it's not we don't just finish up at 6:30. So I think we should give our members a huge round of applause for these fantastic insights. I think your electorates are very, very lucky to have you all as their elected members of Parliament. So thank you so much for on our last sitting night. I know you're coming back tomorrow for the last sitting day as well, and then you're back in your constituencies and your electorates advocating. So thank you very much, and all the best for the rest of the year.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to our audience as well, and your
Yes.
terrific questions. We
you.
couldn't do these programs without you, so thank you very, very much. And please come back next year. Now thanks Tamara for saying earlier that this is a lovely series, and we want to keep continuing the series next year. If you could fill out our survey and let us know what we're doing that's working, and what any ideas that you have for any other programs like this, that would be absolutely wonderful. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everybody.